Do you have a bunch of nasty wallpaper to remove, but you're not sure which tool would be best? Well, I've got you covered. Today I'm going to show you the only 3 tools you need to consider, and by the end you'll know exactly which one is right for you. Before I get into the 3 tools and methods that I'll be going over in this video, regardless of which one of those you end up going with, you will be doing some scraping. So you are going to need a scraping implement. This happens to be my favorite. It is a 6-inch mudding knife. It's very flexible and very sharp, which makes it great at getting underneath wallpaper and scraping it, particularly once it's been soaked through, which is what we'll be talking about in this video. And in case you're interested in any of the tools that I'm going to be covering in this video, I have created a list on our Amazon storefront of all the tools that we use to remove wallpaper. The link for that list will be in the video description, so you can click on that if you are interested. That is an affiliate link, doesn't cost you anything extra, just helps support the channel and making it super simple to find all the stuff that I'm going to be talking about. Onward to method number 1, which is the old sponge and bucket method. So for this, you're going to need a bucket that's going to hold some water and a sponge. Regular household sponge is fine. And the pros of this method is it's very simple and very cheap. And so for this method, you're going to take the bucket, you're going to fill it with super hot water, as hot as your hands can tolerate. Then you're going to soak the sponge and then apply the water to the wallpaper. And you've got to soak through the front usually. Then you're going to scrape with your scraping implement to pull off the front of the wallpaper. And a lot of times you're left with the backer, which also needs to get soaked through. Once the backer is soaked through with water, hopefully that glue releases and you can scrape off that as well. So although this method is simple and cheap, there are some cons. It tends to be kind of messy because every time you put the sponge on the wall, you're going to get drips coming off of the sponge depending on how much you soak it through. Also, the water gets cold and dirty relatively quickly in this big bucket. Because of that, you're going to have to refill the bucket quite often, and every time you dunk the sponge in, eventually you're going to start getting glue coming into the bucket and creating this kind of gross slurry of lukewarm water. So you do have to refill it quite often, and so that's something to consider. It also tends to be one of the slowest methods because you've got to literally sponge water onto every part of the wallpaper to get it to come off. So that's the bucket and sponge. Method number 2 is the spray and pray method. This method is also fairly inexpensive. You just need some water bottles or a water bottle. You can do a simple one like this. It costs a few bucks. Fill this with super hot water, and then you're going to do the same thing, like spray water all over the wall, coating the surface of the wallpaper, and then hopefully that soaks through, and then you will go at it with your scraper. You can also use something a little bit fancier like this, which is a pump that you're going to pump up and then hit the trigger, and they also have bigger units than this one, but same method applies. You just want to fill this super hot water, spray it on the wall, and then let that soak through. The pros of this is that it's still relatively inexpensive. It's less messy a lot of times than the sponge method because you're not having to deal with a big bucket that's getting dirty. And also the water tends to stay warmer longer in these spray bottles because it's self-contained. You're kind of trapping some of that heat in there. The cons of this method is you do have to refill these fairly frequently if you're doing a lot of wallpaper removal, and also your hands can get tired from pulling the trigger on the spray bottle or holding this one a lot. It also requires a lot of spraying. You're going to be dumping quite a bit of water onto the walls. A little bonus tip, if you do a hybrid method of using a spray bottle and a sponge, that works pretty well, where you can actually spray the wallpaper with the spray bottle and then rub it in a little bit with the sponge. It kind of helps the water soak in a little bit. I found to be quite effective as well. And now for method number 3, which is by far my favorite, which is the power steamer. This is one that's from Wagner, and this is my favorite unit that I've ever used. Huge game changer when it comes to removing wallpaper, particularly ones that are giving you trouble and not coming off super easy. The advantages of this particular unit, if you're unfamiliar with a steamer, basically you fill it with water, cut it on, and it heats the water up and generates a ton of steam. And what's amazing about this one, or my favorite feature, is there's actually a trigger on the steam wand, which controls the steam on some of the less expensive units. As soon as the unit comes up to temperature, it just starts generating steam and it won't stop coming out until the unit runs out of water. That's totally fine. You just have to end up putting the steamer head into a bucket when you're not using it because it is just going to keep pumping steam out. Whereas with this one, once you fill it, it comes up to temperature. You can control the flow of the steam by pressing the trigger, which just makes it super easy to use. And then when you put it down, it's not just billowing steam out into the room. The pros of this unit are it is super easy to use it in large areas, It soaks the paper with incredibly hot steam, which is the best case scenario. So with wallpaper, what you're trying to do is soak the glue that's holding the wallpaper to the wall and soak it through with hot water so it activates that glue and then releases it. And just, you want it to slide off super easily with your mudding knife or whatever you're using to scrape it. It should just fall right off. And this is the best case scenario that I've come across. It does really well. Another good feature about this unit particularly is because of the trigger and your control of the steam, it doesn't run out of water too quickly. It stays filled for a relatively long time, which is really nice. Although this unit is pretty dope, there are some cons. It's the most expensive option of all the things I've gone over in this video. It does take a little bit of time for it to heat up. And then when you do run out of steam, particularly on a model like this that's a little bit newer, once it runs out, you can't refill it right away because it's got to cool down. It won't even let you open it until the unit is cooled down, and then you can refill it. It's not a huge deal, just something to consider. Also, if you're steaming a lot of wallpaper, it's going to make the room quite humid because you're literally blowing hot steam into the room. So it's just something to be aware of, particularly if you're doing it and it's already hot in the room. It could be summer out or whatever. Just try and get some airflow in there that can mitigate a lot of that. With all that being said, which one of these should you choose? And here's what I'll say. If you have a lot of wallpaper to remove, or you know your wallpaper is a big pain in the butt, I would highly recommend buying or renting one of these power steamers. It makes a monster difference, particularly the one that has a trigger on it. I know I've said that a bunch in this video, but this unit will give you the best shot at that work sucking the least amount possible. Now, if you have a smaller area, or maybe it's just a border in a bathroom, something like that, you know, you probably already have a sponge lying around and maybe even a spray bottle. Give those a go, see how it goes, and that might do you. All right, so now that you're good to go on all your wallpaper removal needs, once it is removed, it's time to make those walls look clean and sharp. So in my next video, I'll show you the best way to paint straight lines like a pro. You can check that out right over here. Until next time, y'all take it easy, work smart, and have a good one. Thanks.